So, as Lisa says, I'm here to tell you a story, actually, a story of Springwatch, which is now 11 years old. We thought it was a one-hit wonder, and we're still here. And it's got more and more sophisticated, but there are some health warnings in here. All I'm going to do is tell you a story, and it is for you, with your own background and your own cultural referencing and your own paradigms to interpret it as you see fit. And I'll be here for today and tomorrow, so you can come and discuss more as and when you need. So I'm going to make the assumption, I'm afraid, that most people know what Springwatch is. It's a live wildlife thing, goes out in the spring. Well, actually, it goes out in the early summer, but don't tell the audience. We try and engage people to be more actively participative with nature, as well as being a bit of a soap opera, a bit of a news programme, and a bit of a nature club. So what have we learned? Well, what does multi-platform mean? Well, that was 2007, as Ed says. This is before social media really existed, and already we had quite a lot of channels, quite a lot of platforms. Don't worry about the detail, just notice it's a very, very long list. And before you say smug bastard, that's actually quite hard work, and there's quite a lot of platforms and options that we didn't choose, because even then, in 2007, where we really maxed up and decided to embrace digital and multi-platform, even though at that stage that phrase didn't exist outside large railway stations, we thought we'd have a go, and we haven't stopped. But the way we've done it and what we've done has changed as we've gone along. So that was 7, 8 years ago. So this is how Springwatch feels to me now, metaphorically. Now, in there's a television programme going on. You can probably see some presenters and all of that. There's some cameras and all of that. But this is how it now feels. The audience have joined us. In fact, they're almost beginning to take over. And it's all getting a bit complicated, a bit crowded, and a bit noisy. But at the base of it are stories. Sorry about the fuzzy picture, but this was taken in 2004 off a screen grab. That little chick there, that is a blue-tipped chick. He was called Runty. He was our first ever star. We told stories about animals by putting little cameras in their nests and watching them, even though they didn't know we were doing it. And people got very engaged by that. But we took that and we ran with it, because what we very quickly discovered was that people took stories and started giving them resonance in their own life. And as proof positive, I quote Tony the Birch in 2004. Notice the really sophisticated web design. This was way, way before social media. This was a message board, with all due thanks to Lisa for allowing us to do this. Now, do have a little read, but basically that bloke saw Runty's little plight, and I should say Runty's plight was he was left behind by his parents. All his brothers and sisters fled, and he was left there overnight. It was a television cliffhanger. Honest. But people got very, very excited. Don't worry, parents arrived in the morning, and he was free. Hooray! And there were bells across the nation. But look at what that did to Tony the Birch, right? You know, I've been astounded by the empathy generated by Runty's plight and the desperate desire of people to do something. We can use this in a very positive way. Let's all pledge that we'll do something on behalf of Runty to make the world a better place. This guy should have been Winston Churchill, but he was some bloke on a message board. Now, a lot of people read that, and a lot of people were feeling that, and we suddenly thought, my God, we can basically take Big Brother meets the 10 o'clock news featuring an ex-comedian and that blonde, bubbly-haired lady from the travel show, i.e. Bill Oddie and Kate Humble, and we can actually get people to do things. So we started experimenting, as Lisa said, with ways of doing it. Now, here's a health warning, big, big health warning to my little story. You guys don't have a great big television programme behind what you do, okay? And so that's a bit of an issue, but I will show you that actually some of the principles we've learned can apply to absolutely anything. And the other thing is there's a C word in the BBC that's even worse than an F word, and that's campaigning. We're not allowed to, all right, because we're publicly owned, la la la, go and read the charter. It's illegal for me to campaign. Now, I am a rabid conservationist, as many of you know, and so I do find myself running along with my hands and my feet tied together, but that doesn't stop me, because the BBC can still provide a forum, a platform in which journeys and stories can begin. So there's the health warning, because it's actually up to you lot to take what we do and then carry on that journey. And we'll get to how we work together in a minute. So Ed, I know, because I know him and we've spoken, is going to give me a really, really hard time just after this about saying, well, that's all going to be fluffy media nonsense with people sharing, but not actually doing anything, all right? But so what can an audience do if you give them the right platform and you inspire them in the right way with the right stories? What can they do that they couldn't do 15 years ago? Well, for a start, and I'm just going to give you this from our perspective, they create incredibly beautiful things that then go on to inspire other people. I couldn't take a picture of a kingfisher like that, and nor could many of my cameramen. But GPR 48, funny name, he or she can, and sometimes they can take pictures that you just wouldn't ever be, no matter how long you sat and waited, you would never be in the right place at the right time, but they are. Thank you, Louis Dawson. Caption competition, anyone? So, okay, all very well. Yes, a bit trite, and I know Ed will pick up on that later. Take that note. Ed, yes, it's all about little squirrels looking cute and looking like human beings. But actually, there was this moment when things started to really become potent for us. Now, Winter Watch is now an established part of the Watch franchise, but there was a moment a few years ago when we made a show called Snow Watch, where quite literally it snowed a lot. It hadn't done for about 10 years. Britain crashed to a halt, even though Canada seems to do it every year really easily. We went into national disaster mode, and I was literally in my allotment tobogganing with my children when I got a phone call, and it was the controller of BBC Two, Janice Hadlow, and she said, Tim, the country's ground to a halt. No one is telling us what's happening to the wildlife. We want you to do it. You're our go-to team. We've got a slot for you in 6.5 days. Please make me a 1-hour programme. The country shut down. I didn't know where my presenters were, and I was tobogganing with my kids, right? So the first thing we did when we suddenly realised we had 6.5 days to make a 1-hour programme, and I hasten to add, it is the most watched programme we've ever made. We've got 4.7 million viewers 6.5 days later, is we asked our audience. We already had, this is again slightly before real mainstream social media, certainly in the demographic of our audience, but we put the word out and we said, help, we got 6.5 days to make a programme about what's going on. So what's going on? And it was extraordinary, because in it came these amazing images, anecdotes, pieces of information. We started to tell the story of that snow event and the wildlife response to it together. And within 2 or 3 days, we had 2,000 or 3,000 contributions from people, and most of them were bang on because we asked them the right questions, and they were so up for it. So it wasn't just pretty. They started seeing things happen, and they were documenting that, and we were pulling this together. And we were literally beginning to create the show around what people were sending us, telling us, and crucially asking us. So many people said, what happened to all those red deer that you were featured in Autumn Watch? All those stags, they're all exhausted, right? And apparently the winter is the time which sorts out the sheep from the goats, or the stags from the wimps. And so many people asked us about that. We went and made an item about it, all right? Sent Martin Hughes Games off, and he did a piece about it. People started seeing loads of these. It's a red wing, by the way, even though it's an orange wing, but anyway, never mind. This funny bird has shown up in my garden, never seen it before, what the hell is it? So we did a piece on redwings because we were answering their questions. So remember, audiences can bring you questions, not just assets, all right? And that can inform what you do later, because what you're beginning to understand is what it's like for them, what it's like in their worldview, not ours. So we made a show, and we got 4.7 million, and what was really interesting was the audience response just said, that nailed it. That absolutely nailed what I wanted to know. And the reason was, it wasn't because we were clever, it's because we asked them. But we had digital technology that allowed us to ask them, even though we couldn't even get Land Rovers out of places and we had to have presenters stay where they were because the whole place had shut down. So now, the audience have their own show. They're so good, they've got their own show. So we do Springwatch Unsprung on BBC Two once a week for every week that we broadcast. And actually, there's so much stuff that they want to tell us about, send us and all of that, that we do it on Red Button every single night. So for every hour of normal telly we make half an hour of Unsprung. And in Springwatch, because we now use Red Button as a sort of pop-up channel, albeit with lots of live cam streaming all the time, in 3 weeks, we made 483 hours of content, all day, all night, for 3 weeks. And it wasn't bad, actually. It wasn't bad. It cost very little because we got people in the flow. We got people moving. Now, obviously, that's big scale. This is a very odd, big health warning here. This is a very odd example. But take your version of that and say if you could get people to collaborate with you. So what's happened now that this has become normal? So we have regular contributors. That's a man called Ben Burville. He is a doctor. He lives in Northumberland, and he has a slightly uncanny, you could say almost unhealthy relationship with wild seals off the Farne Islands. I love the fact, you can't quite see it, but this punter here, Ruth Watts, said, it's a sealfie. Very good, very good. Anyway, he has this, he's spent years doing this, and he's become a regular contributor of ours. So what we've been able to do is we've been able to give him a platform as a storyteller. He has a very interesting story to tell. He uses going and swimming with seals as a way of chilling out from a very, very stressful surgeon's job in a hospital, right, which really freaks him out. Brilliant, brilliant story to tell. And all we do is we just open up to him. What he's done here, we didn't have to do anything. You click on that, you get his film, all right? So think about yourselves as platforms yourselves, okay? You can have a bit of fun with stuff. Ed, take notes. Give me grief for this, because there's absolutely no value to this at all. So we feature lots of really, really good photographers. That's wonderful. But our very cheeky web producer, Laura Thorne, up there, who you may recognise from the telly, she walked up to this bloke who arrived with great big long lenses and all of that on our site. And she went, lovely pictures. Do you ever take any really bad ones? Like really crap photos? And he went, yeah. Do you keep them? Yeah. Can I see some? So she invented #WildPhotoFail. Send us all of your absolutely worst and weirdest photos that you've never shown anyone, but they're quite funny. Now, this one I love. This is a passing carrion crow turning itself into a witch's hat on a sheep. Now, that is a photo bomb. Imagine trying to get that yourself. Now, this is a bit of fun, but it gets some people engaged, right? This might be the only thing people do. Try it out, #WildPhotoFail. As with all user-generated content, much of it is utter rubbish. Every now and then, telly gold. So, 100 Days of Nature, we ask people to, between Springwatch and Autumn Watch, take a picture of nature every single day, and let's tell the story by you of the 100 days between the two series. Here's a lady who took one absolutely every single day, and I love the fact she just went, my #100 Days of Nature, proud. Right? She shared that, I shared that on my Facebook page because I thought, how fantastic. Some people did it only in macro. Some people did it only on their way to school. Some people did it only in their garden. Now, you could say this is pointless, but actually these are people beginning to define themselves. Citizen science, we talked a little bit about this. This is just a grab from the Autumn Watch website. There's a little idea of some of the things we're asking people to do. We're pushing people out to people like you. This is where you guys take over and can take these people who are motivated and feel in a place of trust and they feel safe. And this can have real impact. Notice the font shift again. This is way back in the day, 2005, when people didn't really think this thing called climate change was really happening. So we worked with the Woodland Trust and the UK Phenology Network, and we said to people, find these 6 things and tell us when you first see them, because we want to see if climate change is affecting our springs. 1/3 people did it, and it became a massive, massive data set. We did this 3 years in a row, and cut long story short, we worked with some very specific scientific studies, and this data set among others, was taken to the European Commission a couple of years later and became the piece of evidence that made the European Commission change its policy. People power, right? Ed, that worked. Okay? So our job is to keep offering people things to do, right? Your job is to take that and run with it. And if we work together, it can work. So here's a few little learnings for you. There's my garden. Looks a bit chaotic, but actually, what are the right conditions to allow all of these things to begin to flourish? And if you do that, beautiful things happen. So community, we've all heard of that. Everybody wants one. Actually, wouldn't it be better if we were all part of one, rather than competing against each other? What we need to learn to do is to work better together so that there is a community. We have our own community because we're quite a big player, but it's very important that a community has a sense of purpose and a sense of identity. These are known in marketing terms. We didn't know it. They're called values, brand values, okay? We didn't know that. We just said, this is what we are, all right? Anyone who's watched Springwatch in any form, be it on CBeebies or local radio or on the telly or on the web, hopefully will recognise that this is what we're like. But notice it isn't too constricting, so people can go off and do stuff. So what's our community values for how we're going to address participation in the natural world? This is very important. There are my kids. If you tap into people's passions, you're going to hit them absolutely where it sings, okay? Because that's what they're already interested in, what they already want to participate in, and what defines them, what makes them feel good, what they talk about when they go to a party and someone says, oh, who are you? You're Tim, right? So what do you do? What are you into? And I go, oh, I'm into parenting, I'm into nature, I'm into, gardening, whatever. So think about where they are, what their passions are, and you tap into them, you're tapping into a seam of gold. Lisa's already talked about this. Once engagement isn't just for Christmas, okay? Engagement isn't just for Twitter. Engagement is a marriage. It's a contract. You've got to stick with it. If you're going to get in there, you need to know how you're going to sustain it. You've got to give them things to do. They've got to feel like they're participating. You've got to reward them. This is what the whole Unsprung thing was about. We created Unsprung not because we wanted to make more telly. It's because we wanted to reward people for participating. Know your platforms. Know what you're sitting on. It's very important to understand, because there be dragons. There really are. And dragons in terms of sucking up all of your resources and causing you lots and lots of stress. So just very quickly, Flickr's really good if what you're doing is visual. All right? It's there. You can use it. It's easy. We have 4 Flickr groups a year. Back in the day when we set up a new Flickr group, we became the fastest growing Flickr group in the world because people really wanted to do it. We hit into a passion and we gave them a platform. Passion plus platform equals action, participation. Always 3 Ps, must remember that. Facebook, very good for building communities, right? Better for older people. It sits there and waits for you. It sits in your news feed. It enters your life. So where are you in Facebook, right? Where are you on people's news feed? Don't think about where people are and why aren't they coming to my website. You need to be on their website, which is their Facebook feed. So Facebook, very, very useful for us, this group of people. Twitter, different. It's news. It comes, it goes. Talk to the guys at the BTO. They have absolutely rocked on Twitter because they have married up on Twitter their data with our content, and it becomes a second screen. So we talk about ospreys, they show you ospreys. Genius, and we're going to do some really clever things there. But Twitter is here today, gone tomorrow, and it's full of cynics. Just understand that. Twitter is for cynics. Right, so, isn't it, right? That's what the funny stuff is. You watch a BBC Natural History Landmark programme and watch it on Twitter, you'll never laugh so much in your life, even when you're not meant to. Lisa's already gone through this a bit. This is my test of why to use things, and more importantly, to use the drug analogy, when to just say no, because you should. You should pick very, very carefully. Know your brand, i.e. brand values, what you and all of that. Know your audience is so important. Don't just think that people are going to listen to you. Know why you are speaking to them and who they are, and know your partners. We must work better together. Be relevant, reflect, ha-ha, gag, reflect the world that people are already in and be part of that story. If you try and impose another story, then they're going to have to choose whether to take your story or not. Become part of their story and they don't have to choose. Understand that once you get into this game, you are always on. This is very difficult for television people because they usually have schedules and everything. And in the watches, we've had to get used to the fact we're always on. Our digital social is year-round now. And remember, there's my wife and daughter. They're out there. And that's where we need to go. It's not about bringing them to us. And believe me, you try telling that to the BBC. It's about being out there where they are, because they're taking this stuff with them now. And mobile phones have radically changed that, as have tablets. But out there, there's always someone with a need. That's my son. And he's going, Dad, what's this funny worm I've just dug up? So address their need, as Lisa says. So to Ed's point that he will barrack me on, what the hell does that have to do with conserving bee orchids, right? The point is, I personally believe that we're at a turning point now, that if we work together, we can actually do it. We need to start small, but start, okay? That's an adult, before you ask. Start small, because you can still be perfectly formed. You can be very, very targeted. Work together. Take baby steps. Those are my kids heading off on the top of Hambledon Hill, which is where the bee orchids are from. But work together, take baby steps, and see it as an adventure, okay? Try things out. Start networking together. And if we can start making a network of networks and a social media of social medias and all of that, we actually start working together and not competing with each other, beautiful things happen. Thank you.